evening, which is Lauren Kuby. I'm excited to introduce her. She is in her second term as a City of Tempe council member, and I live in Tempe, so I'm excited, and is a champion of campaign finance reform. She spearheaded a very well-known dark money disclosure amendment to the city's charter, and it garnered over 91% support from the voters, which is amazing. For her efforts exposing the corruptive influence of money in politics, she was featured in the inaugural episode of the MSNBC docuseries American Swamp. Now, without further ado, Lauren Kuby.
Thanks, you guys. Whoops, I'm on, right? Yeah. Thanks. It's so great to be here. And just want to get my notes there, my little cheat sheet. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, I'm a two-term council member in Tempe, and I'm not going to be a three-term council member because I actually believe in term limits too, and I believe in rising up other leadership. So I'm going to be running for the Corporation Commission, which is why I look like a blue person here today, because my screen is like really dominating my face. So sorry about that. I have to work that out. So anyway, I became a council member in 2015, sworn in on January 15th and sworn at on January 16th. And I had a lot of ambitions as a council member. I ran on a sustainability platform and I wanted to solarize our city, and I had a lot of other great ambitions, many of which I accomplished, but I did very quickly find that a number of the initiatives I brought forward were being preempted by the state legislature. So that means preemption is when the legislature overturns a local ordinance or initiative, and in my way of thinking, interferes with local democracy. So one notable example was plastic bags. They tried to ban single-use plastic and styrofoam in the city, would save businesses a lot of money. Actually, and the city would have supported them with buying other materials that were compostable. And the legislature banned bans. They banned plastic bans. And I tried to do an energy benchmarking ordinance, and they banned energy benchmarking, which is a bit ridiculous when you think about it. And they even banned, I tried to legislate puppy mills coming into our state to prevent, well, essentially stop the commercial sale of puppy mill pets. And they overturned that. So it was getting a bit ridiculous with all of my agenda items in my work group. The legislature would see what I was working on and then ban it preemptively even before I could bring it forward to the council. So I turned my focus to something else. I turned my focus to something I really believed in, which was reducing the barriers to running for office and trying to create a more transparent, more ethical government. Because we see increasing distrust in government, and this was true in 2015 when I was a new council member, and it's obviously even more true now. And it was frustrating to me because I thought, the local officials are usually the form and level of government that people most respect, because you run into your council member in the Costco and they're more easily approachable. And I wanted to find ways to just increase that level, the transparency we did have. And so I worked with Councilmember Corey Woods, who's now our mayor. We enacted Lobbyist Reform. You had to state you were a lobbyist and fill out a little piece of paper before you spoke to council. We had a lot more ethics rules that were developed. We banned certain, gifts and levels of gifts that council members could have received, or very expensive lunches or dinners. They could be complimented. So we tried to do a lot of that. And then in 2016, we passed a really major ballot initiative. It was before the dark money one, but that ballot initiative was to reduce the amount of money you could give to a candidate running for office. In the case of cities in Arizona, you can give $6,250 per person to a candidate running for local office. And to me, that was obscene, because what I saw from my observation was that that money was coming from the development industry, from land use attorneys and those who had very strong economic interests before the council. So we put that up for a vote. And we also, within that ballot initiative, we decided to restrict the amount of PAC money you could get, political action committee money you could get, from unlimited money to $10,000. And it would be, I think, $5,000 for a super PAC and $2,500 for a regular PAC. So the most you could take in its entirety would be $10,000. That was really game changing too. So we did We did have incredible success with that ballot initiative. I think 86% of Tempeans supported it. And suddenly the max you could give to a candidate was $500. And that can still be pretty impactful, giving a candidate $500, but not like giving a candidate $6,000. You know, 4 developers can pretty much fund a campaign. So it was a great stride forward. And then we kind of liked what we were doing there because the legislature and the state of Arizona really couldn't preempt us, because the state Supreme Court had found it in a decision in the Tucson gun case that the method and manner of local elections are of statewide concern and not, are of local concern and not statewide concern. We have 91 cities and towns in Arizona, and 19 of those cities and towns are charter cities that have more, they're able to legislate in areas of local concern. So we started to see some real movement in that area, and we knew that they couldn't preempt us. So in 2018, I worked again with Corey Woods, or early on. He left the council, I believe in 2016, but we've been working on this issue. And we brought forward a dark money ordinance. I worked with Arizona Advocacy Network and other democracy groups and Terry Goddard. And that ordinance was to require that anyone who was spending money in Tempe elections had to reveal not just their donors, but their original source donors. Because you all know that money gets deposited in an independent expenditure group, and it's transferred to another group and transferred to another group, and it's a very complex web. And so we made a very strict requirement that you're going to spend money in our elections. You're not going to say who you are. You're going to be Tempeans for, you know, apple pie. Well, you're going to now tell us who you are, so the voters will know when they vote. They'll be more educated, and you know, essentially the people have a right to know. So that passed. And George, you said 91% of the vote. That's not correct. It's 90.44% of the vote. And I'm really proud of that 0.44%. And Terry Goddard would say to be just like, wow, even Putin doesn't get numbers like that. Like, that is amazing. That shows there is a bipartisan desire and a nonpartisan desire to have election reform. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican or Green or Libertarian, like, people like to know who's trying to influence their vote. So we passed that initiative. And so I thought, like, let's keep going. We tried to pass a clean elections ballot initiative and get that just referred to the ballot, right? Because council can simply refer an initiative to the ballot and the voters can vote on it if it's changing something in our charter. And sadly, we didn't succeed in that. We didn't have council support. And that really broke my heart, because I thought we need to reduce the barriers to running for office. And still, even at, you know, raising $500 a pop, it's difficult to get the $40, $50, $90,000 you need to run a race. And generally you have to be more established in the community and older. And that, to me, was a barrier that we should try and overcome. But sadly, we didn't succeed in that. And I've had many discussions over the past few years to think about other ballot initiatives. And one is ranked choice voting, and one is term limits. And another one is district level seats, where we would divide Tempe not into at-large seats, like I'm elected to represent all of Tempe. In Phoenix and Glendale, they have district level seats, right? So district level seats act as reduce the barrier to running for office, because you have less voters you have to speak with, and then you're able to actually knock on the doors multiple times with those voters. You don't necessarily need a lot of money to get your message out. So those are initiatives I've been trying to get support for on the council. I mean, sadly, I don't think we have support. We maybe have 3 votes, or 3 votes and maybe an iffy 4. And in Tempe, we have a process where voters can get ballot initiatives on the ballot. As again, I said that the city themselves can refer a ballot initiative with 4 votes. We have 7 council members, so 4 people can elect to refer a ballot initiative to the voters. There's also another way you can do that, and it's through popular ballot initiatives, people-centered. So in Tempe, that's you need about 13,600 signatures. That amounts to pretty much half of everyone that votes in city elections. So that's a pretty high number. It's why we haven't seen a ballot initiative since Dr. Fairbanks brought forward an anti-smoking initiative, and that, gosh, it was 30 years ago, I believe.
Wow.
So that's one thing I would like to see is, and I'm trying to talk to my fellow council members behind the scenes. It's like the legislature is making it harder and harder to get ballot initiatives up. and they make it easier and easier for candidates to get their signatures. Isn't that interesting? So why don't we find a way where we can make it slightly easier for residents to get a ballot initiative on the ballot? And in my mind, it's all about these democracy initiatives. And we've seen all over the country democracy initiatives doing really well. And I think there's great potential in Tempe. I think if we put a ranked choice voting ballot initiative on the ballot, it would pass overwhelmingly. I really do. I don't even know how much money we'd have to spend on a campaign. But the point is we need to get to that point. And 13,000 signatures is not insurmountable. It can be done, especially with a paid effort. You need to have some paid gathering, especially, you know, in COVID times, it's tough to get signatures. But I think there's great potential with Tempe to be a test city, if that's something that you all would be interested in. I know I'm interested in that. Right now, I am focused on running for the Arizona Corporation Commission and have a lot of, you know, other initiatives and projects on my mind. I also work at ASU full-time for the Stardust Center for Affordable Homes and Family. And so I would just love to hear what you all think. Have some questions about what Tempe could or could not do related to ranked choice voting. And I thank you for time and letting me be here. And is it okay that I post information about my candidacy, or should I stay away from that?
I'm fine with it. Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Anyway, one of the reasons I'm running for Corporation Commission is I think we have to bring greater transparency to that body. It's called the fourth branch of government, and there are 5 elected commissioners, and they decide on utility rates, they decide on renewable energy standards, energy efficiency standards. They regulate all the public monopolies in water and gas and energy, and it's profoundly important position within our state, and it's profoundly important to consumers that we have someone who's looking at transparency and consumer advocacy and consumer protection.
Lauren, this is Blake. First of all, thanks for being here tonight. So last month we had Ken Clark, and Ken talked to us a little bit about how local adoption and statewide adoption, you know, kind of could go hand in hand. What's your input or thought there?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the dark money ordinance that Terry Goddard is, sorry, the outlaw dirty money or outlaw dark money that he's bringing forward this year, you know, it pretty much is the Tempe law. So I mean, there's arguments on both sides. I mean, I think it's good to test the waters in a city like Tempe and see the support. I know that when they've tested the dark money ordinance at statewide level, they've had like 85–90% support amongst the public. So, you know, it's a lot less expensive to run a citywide ordinance, and you can kind of do a proof of concept. And I believe that progress percolates and that it's great to show best practices. And at the city level, I'm a big believer in cities and cities leading the way. I know that for the state, you know, it takes an enormous amount of money. So you need like a few $1 million to get a ballot initiative up in the state, right? It's at least a couple $1 million to succeed, and there's going to be a lot of court challenges. But with a citywide initiative, you would need far less. Like I think you could do it probably for $50,000.
Wow.
I did have a question along those lines. So Tempe to me seems to be a more prominent city, or a city that I guess catches people's attention. What do you think about the idea of maybe starting ranked choice voting efforts in smaller towns, like in Strawberry, Arizona, or I guess smaller towns that the legislature doesn't care about, and then moving on to the bigger suburban cities?
No, I mean, that's an excellent idea. It's an excellent idea. And I think there's some towns that are more open, and we should talk maybe offline about that. There's some towns or cities that would be more open to that. If you have Tucson or Phoenix or Tempe or Flagstaff, there's going to be the usual reaction in the legislature. So, I mean, I like that idea, but you're going to have to find champions, and that's what you're doing in this first year, right? You're trying to find endorsements or get endorsements from local elected officials and do a lot of the behind the scenes work, because a lot of councils, a lot of mayors, they don't like to go forward with something if they don't think the votes aren't there, and they don't think the votes are
Mhm.
the votes to be more than a 4-3 vote. They want to have like a 6-1 or a 5-2 vote. I'm of the mindset that, you know, you make change happen and you have to be willing to be a little bit courageous. And sometimes that's a 4-3 vote. But, you know, a lot of mayors, they really want to move forward more cautiously. So it would be good to find a council where you have people that are committed from the outset, and just know that this legislature made it more difficult to get ballot initiatives up at the city and town level. It used to be 3 months before the election. I think now it's 5 months before. So I think it used to be able to approve, I think in July, but I think now it has to be May before an election year. So that adds another pressure to getting ballots up, ballot initiatives.
I have a question to follow on that. Hey, Lauren.
Hey, Nick.
So talking about the cities and passing something locally, would it be more than just the city? Because doesn't the county have the machines that count everything? Would something have to go through the county too?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is a really good point, because if the city of Tempe adopted ranked choice voting, I believe our costs would increase. We'd have to sort of run the election on our own. So it'd be like $140,000 a year. So that's out of our budget. So that's a really good point. But I also think that, I mean, there's a possibility that Maricopa County would be interested in sort of trying that out too. And there could be some grants that would be allowed to, to sort of jumpstart that and pilot that. Does anybody else want to speak to the issue of the county?
Interesting.
We have talked to a few county elections officials, and yeah, their general take is, you know, it's possible, right? The hardware and the software exists to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They can run one city election different from the other. But, you know, in general, they don't want to do it because it's more work and more complexity for them. So that seems to be the general feedback we've got.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is the legislature so reactive to cities like, you know, Tempe or Flagstaff doing innovation? Do they feel it's a threat to their power structure, or what's causing that such a pushback to innovation at the city level?
I mean, preemption in itself is not a bad thing. You could preempt a law that was discriminatory, right? What's
Sure.
so dangerous about preemption in Arizona is that it's special interests, usually corporate special interests, that are driving and dictating that preemption. In the case of the single-use plastic, it was Novalex who produces most of the plastic bags in our country, you know, and the American Chemistry Council, which is very connected to Novalex. So like it's a very tangled web, and they're very connected to the Koch brothers as well. And so oftentimes it's the corporate special interests who have are threatened by the local initiatives and by sort of that progress percolating upwards and putting pressure on the legislature to also, you know, make a statewide law, for example.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Wow.
But, you know, preemptions, I was called Preemption Patty for Arizona. I think it's proud of that moniker, but preemption is a trend that's happening all over the country. And it can be pretty dangerous to local democracies, and frustrating because I think it destroys trust amongst our population when a local democracy passes an initiative or law and then it's quickly done away with. We've seen this and we've seen this at the statewide level too, where a state will ban the commercial sale of pets from puppy mills, and that'll be done through a ballot initiative. And then a month later, the legislature overturns what the people decided in a ballot initiative. And we have protections in Arizona for our ballot initiatives that they're weakening protections, but they're protections nonetheless. But we see preemption sort of at all levels of government, and it's on the rise.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. That was wonderful. It's always nice to hear from my own council members. So thank you for all the work you've